Well, folks, another year is in the books. Whether it be our weather, our celebrities, our politics, whatever, everything feels like it's getting worse and sadder and angrier and more on fire. Well, thank God for professional wrestling, because at least it gives us something we can all look at and point and laugh at. As is tradition on this channel, this week I'm looking at the worst and the best of WWE in the year 2017. And as always, I'm giving you the bad news first. Number 8. Money in the Bank controversy. Every year we always get excited as Money in the Bank approaches. It gives us a glimpse into who the company thinks is their future stars or next world champions. Not to mention there's the potential for all the mind-blowing spots in the match itself. But this year, things felt a little off. For starters, as the first Money in the Bank since the brand split 2.0 began, it was a bit of a letdown that the show is only reserved for the stars of SmackDown. It's not as if Raw needed it, but for a company that's all about symmetry across both shows, this omission was noticeable. As for the matches themselves, Baron Corbin won the men's ladder match in a field that included Kevin Owens, Shinsuke Nakamura, and AJ Styles. But okay, he's improved a lot since his debut last year, momentum is on his side, so it makes sense. Then came Mr. Rabadoo! As part of the build to what would turn out to be a lame match at SummerSlam, John Cena distracted Baron Corbin as he was trying to cash in his briefcase on an episode of SmackDown, and the Lone Wolf became one of only 3 people to use the briefcase and not win the title. That list also includes John Cena in 2012 and Damien Sandow in 2013, who lost to John Cena. There seems to be a pattern here. Then, of course, there was the inaugural Women's Money in the Bank, a history-making match for the company. But instead of the briefcase being brought down by, a woman, it was James Ellsworth who grabbed it and tossed it down to Carmella. Fans debated the good and the bad of this for weeks. Some people excused it because Carmella was a heel and a precedent was set in a video game. I wish I was making that up. While others claimed that having a man win the match for his female partner kind of ruined the point of everything. Whether it was planned or not, they had a do-over the next week on SmackDown, which Carmella won by herself. So that was all worth it. Number 7. Emelina. Emma's 2017 was really a bizarre one, even by wrestling standards. Most recently, she was involved in the women's title picture and welcomed Asuka into the main roster before getting released. But all this madness really began at the end of last year. In October of 2016, while she was recovering from back surgery, vignettes began to play for Emelina. It was rumored the character was going to be a throwback to valets like Sable and the Cat, counteracting the strong, independent spirit of the women's revolution. So we waited, and waited, and waited, and waited, and waited. For 17 goddamn weeks, we were all so patient and so good. Then on February 13th of this year, Emelina finally arrived, then went away again. Reports as to why the gimmick was kiboshed are unclear. Some say Emma didn't want to do it. Others say she was unable to do it. But for whatever reason, to have months and months of build-up only to have the gimmick publicly canceled the way it was felt like a slap in the face to everybody involved and everyone watching. After a few more weeks, Emma returned to TV as her old self again. Then she got hurt again. But hey, at least she had a cool hashtag gimmick when she came back. Number 6. Dolph Ziggler, Angry Great Loser. One of the most maddening things about being a fan for the last several years is to witness the slow, steep decline in relevancy of Dolph Ziggler. He's objectively one of the best guys on the roster, yet repeatedly gets his proverbial dick stomped in. But what would happen when that frustration played out on the television product? In August, Dolph began doing a series of impersonations of wrestler entrances. His point being, fans cared more about flashy characters than about actual talent, of which he has loads. So after stripping himself of his boisterous entrance and focusing more on his abilities, you would think that would lead to some more wins, right? Well, no. Considering how great his feud with The Miz was last year over the IC title, to see him continuing to lose matches even after having a gimmick change that seemed designed to reverse that is disappointing. But hey, at least Dolph found the secret to getting a push again, complaining about it on podcasts. Number 5. The death of tag teams. Despite dedicating lots of time every week to tag team matches, it appears as though WWE really hates tag teams. Tag team breakups are nothing new in wrestling, but this year alone, we've seen no fewer than 5 teams split on the main roster, either violently or passively. Jericho, Enzo and Cass, The Golden Truth, American Alpha, and most recently, the Hype Bros. That number goes up to 6 if you count DIY's breakup at TakeOver Chicago. And even though it was still a really great moment, the impact immediately died off when we found out that Tommaso Ciampa, who instigated the breakup, would be out with a knee injury. Now, in the grand scheme of things, most of these tag teams breaking up aren't a huge loss. Most were never going to challenge for the championship anyway. But it does create an even wider gap between teams that are contenders and teams that aren't. All these breakups do is further expose just how laughably imbalanced the tag divisions are across both shows. There's still plenty of teams out there, but they're way below the caliber of guys like the Usos, the New Day, the Bar, and Rollins and Ambrose. Breezango and the Ascension are just doing comic relief now. They're barely wrestling on TV anymore. With so few tag teams getting exposure, it makes sense to thin the herd, but the problem still lies in trying to elevate the rest of the tag teams across Raw and SmackDown that maybe aren't challenging for the belts at any given moment. Number 4. NXT's class of 2017. Here's a question that WWE needs to seriously address. Does NXT currently exist to help create the company's next superstars, or to help freshen up their mid-card? Because if it's the latter of the two, they're doing a great job. Although the jury is still out on the Riot Squad and 2/3 of Absolution, this year has not been good to others who have been promoted. Shinsuke Nakamura, Bobby Roode, Ty Dillinger, and Asuka all did great for themselves in NXT, but since coming up to Raw and SmackDown, they just feel like they've been a part of the scenery. Nothing about them feels special anymore. Their weaknesses have been exposed. In Ty's case, he's not even on TV anymore. The Revival's had terrible luck with injuries, so they get a pass. By default, Samoa Joe's probably the biggest success story for NXT this year, but even that's been a rough go. He's had some title matches here and there, but the writers don't know what to do with him. Not to mention a knee injury put him on the shelf for a couple of months. And lest we forget this year's Men's Survivor Series matchup, the first 4 guys eliminated were Joe, Shinsuke, Bobby Roode, and Finn Balor. Hooray for the future! The problem is, there's an expectation among fans that these huge stars of NXT should be able to carry some of their momentum with them when they go to Raw or SmackDown, but for the most part, that has not been the case. Maybe the company should temper fans' expectations by just calling up a bunch of mid-carders from NXT so there's less of a ceiling and less disappointment. Number 3. Bray Wyatt's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad year. Bray Wyatt has had a lot of bad years, but somehow 2017 seems to have topped them all. The year began well enough for Bray. At the Elimination Chamber in February, he won the WWE Championship, but that reign ended in disappointment after losing to Randy Orton at WrestleMania. Remember all those creepy images that were put on the ring of the maggots and the worms and stuff? Did that lead anywhere? Nope. Then the two had a rematch at Payback in the much maligned House of Horrors match. There was a lot wrong with this pre-taped dreck, the least of which being the fact it was filmed at night while it was daytime in San Jose where the pay-per-view was taking place. The match ended with Orton losing to Bray Wyatt, so that means Bray wins the title back, right? Well, no, because in the middle of the build, they changed it to a non-title match, turning Bray's win totally meaningless. He never got his championship rematch. He moved to Raw, where he tried and failed to win the Universal title. Then in a rare positive in 2017, he beat Seth Rollins 2 nights in a row. Whoa, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Then came Bray's seemingly endless feud with Finn Balor. It was here where he debuted his alter ego of Sister Abigail. That got a lot of flack as it was, mostly because fans couldn't wrap their head around the idea of a man having any semblance of femininity. But then we didn't even get the payoff because Bray went down with meningitis before their match at TLC. As of now, Bray is currently feuding with the newly awoken Matt Hardy, which probably means this terrible momentum for Bray is just gonna keep on a-rollin'. Number 2. Jason Jordan, Kurt Angle's son. A couple of months into Kurt Angle's time as general manager of Raw, a mystery began to unfold. Kurt was getting texts about something from his past that could ruin his career. What was it? Was it a torrid love affair? A murder? Insider trading? Giving money to David Duke's 1996 US Senate campaign? What could it have been? Then in July of this year, the secret was out. Angle had a son that he conceived back in college but didn't know about until now. That son happened to work for the same company that he was working for. That son was Jason Jordan. Okay. The silliness of pretending that these two are actually related notwithstanding, it feels that the company picked the wrong member of American Alpha to saddle with this burden. Chad Gable always seemed to be the more captivating and charismatic of the two, and while you could argue that's exactly why he wasn't given this gig, I think he certainly would have made it work better. Needless to say, fans have crapped all over this new angle. See what I did there? There's only a few different ways this can possibly end, and I guarantee you none of them are pretty. Jason's character seems to be finally headed in the right direction as this entitled, whiny heel who wants to use his relationship with his father to get ahead, but I get the idea that the original plan for this gimmick was much different than that. Before I reveal number 1, this year I want to highlight a special honorable mention. One bad thing from this year that happened outside of WWE. So, here we go. Impact Wrestling's branding woes. At the end of 2016, Anthem and Total Nonstop Action Wrestling finally washed their hands of former President Billy Corgan, settling out of court to avoid a contentious lawsuit. But man, the fun was just beginning. The company abandoned the TNA initials in March and renamed themselves Impact Wrestling. Then an old specter from their past came along. Jeff Jarrett's gold bar pyramid scheme was not working like he had hoped, so he was able to glom onto Impact and make a deal. By June, not only was he back in the company that he was forced out of in 2014, he got them to rename themselves after his latest failed project, Global Force Wrestling. Things finally seemed to be back on track for the company after Slammiversary. But within weeks, not only was it clear they put their cart behind the wrong horse as champion, it turns out that Jeff Jarrett was a barely functioning alcoholic. Oh, and get this, despite the merger, Anthem never owned the Global Force name. This fucking company! So in the span of 1 year, they went from TNA to Impact to Global Force and mercifully back to Impact again. Let's hope these guys can learn to tie their shoes in 2018. And the number one worst thing in WWE in 2017 was Jinder Mahal, WWE Champion. You knew this was coming. Jinder Mahal, who had spent his first stint in the company, as well as the bulk of his current one as a jobber, was moved to SmackDown during the Superstar Shakeup, aka the Draft But Not. Upon arriving to SmackDown, he gained some henchmen and became the number one contender for the WWE Championship. In May, Jinder shocked the world when he beat Randy Orton to become the new champion. Now at the time, I was all for this. Even though Jinder had lost all the time before his push, you could argue that the Singh brothers were the key to his winning ways, so that made a lot of sense there as a heel. I was just happy to see some new blood in the scene. But after a while, something happened. Well, that's wrong. Actually, nothing happened. As time went on, Jinder cut the same promo, wrestled the same match, kept being the same one-dimensional foreign heel. There was never any character development with this man. Having guys like Orton and Shinsuke Nakamura lose to him repeatedly seriously downgraded their stock. So why? Why were they doing this? Why were they running in place with Jinder for so long? Well, the popular theory is it was to drum up interest in that sought-after India market. And to prove how successful this experiment was, that planned tour was cut down to one show due to a lack of ticket sales. By November, fans were praying for a quick and merciful death until AJ Styles rode in like a knight in shining, flat earth believing armor and toppled Jinder for the belt on an episode of SmackDown. As of this recording, Jinder is currently chasing AJ for the belt, and I actually think he's doing really good in this role. I think I would actually be open to another title reign for him if they keep this up, but it's going to take a lot to rebuild my trust after what happened this year. So what do you think sucked in 2017? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time for the best of WWE in 2017.